CEO and the co-founder of Louisiana United International. We are a civil, constitutional, human rights organization, and I'm so excited to be with you here this evening on a great day, along with our lead district attorney, Warren Montgomery, as our special guest for this town hall meeting. I want to welcome you, each and every one, taking the time out of your busy schedules to be with us here this evening in a very important and necessary meeting. It means so much to us to be able to have this opportunity as a community to talk with one of the most powerful people in our community, our lead district attorney, Warren Montgomery. So thank you so very much. I know everyone is busy. There's so much going on. There's a lot to do, but I hope everyone is taking care of their family and neighbors, especially during this time that we all have been in the last couple of years. So we're coming out of it, you know, with the grace of God. Everyone, you know, have hope that, you know, we're going to be back to normal here pretty soon. But most importantly, I want to go over some housekeeping rules. That this is a town hall meeting. Every guest is welcome. If you know someone that probably should be participating with us now in this meeting, you can send them the registration or you can send them the information to join us. This meeting should last approximately an hour, 15 minutes, an hour, 30 minutes or so. We got Q&A. We're gonna give everybody the opportunity to ask questions, but we want everyone to be very respectful of each and every one of us, okay? You know, have time restraints, okay? And we don't wanna go overboard and you know, allow, you know, our conversation to get too lengthy with our questions and our comments. So we have put a time restraint on everyone to ask the question within 30 seconds, to make a comment within 90 seconds. And then we're going to keep it moving so that we can allow each and every person the opportunity to be able to have that chance to speak. So we also want everyone to pay very close attention to the chat. We're going to be sending out messages throughout the chat if necessary. You know, so pay attention to that. The first thing that we're going to do is put the district attorney's website inside of the chat so that you can go and visit his website, which is a very impressive website. I love the website because one of the things that he really lays out all of the very transparent and lays out a lot of information on his website that people really need to see and share with other people too as well. Okay, so if there's nothing else, Dr. Z, did I leave anything out for the housekeeping?
I don't think so.
Okay, all right. So with that said, let's move right into our meeting. We're going to give our DA the opportunity to introduce himself. And once you introduce yourself, Warren, we're going to share our proposed concern that we have as a community. So, and then we're going to go right into Q&A and have you to address any questions and concerns that the public may have in this town hall meeting. So thank you so very much once again for taking the time out your busy schedule to be a part of this very important and necessary town hall meeting on tonight. Thank you. Okay, Warren, go right ahead, introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you, Belinda, and thank you for having me. Thank you, Dr.
Ooh, look
Grass,
at that background. I love it.
having me. Well, I'm outside of my backyard. I moved it around so you could see the trees. And but if it gets too dark, I might have to go inside. Except that I have my grandchildren over here, and they might hopefully they'll maybe they'll be going to bed around 8 o'clock. I don't know, because I don't want them to interrupt us. I know this is very important, and it's a privilege to be here and to be with each and every one of you. I know that probably many of you are just like me. I started the day today at a breakfast meeting at 7:30 a.m. And so I know you're tired, and I'll try to be as brief and as responsive as I can be to all of your questions. And I appreciate, Belinda, all that you're doing to make this, for instance, this interview available to people, so that I, as your servant, as a public servant, can respond to the questions and the interest and the concerns that you as voters and citizens have. So I don't, you can probably find my background on that website somewhere. I don't want to take a lot of time talking about myself. I really want to talk about the concerns that you have and how we can have the best DA's office in America right here in St. Tammany Parish. So with that, y'all fire ahead. I look forward to answering your questions.
Well, absolutely, Juan. What we're going to do is have Dr. Zena Crenshaw Logo give you our proposed concern. We had spoken with you briefly about this concern. So Dr. Z, why don't you take it away?
Thank you so much, and good evening, everyone, and good evening, Mr. Montgomery, and it's great to see you, and Ms. Belinda Parker Brown. And as Ms. Belinda indicated, I am the Assistant Chief of Operations for Louisiana United International. So this is what our concerns are as an organization, and as has been reported, the goal of your office and also the officials of St. Tammany Parish is to have a properly funded criminal justice system. And we are interested as residents and members of Louisiana United International to have a properly funded and functioning criminal justice system. So we look forward to hearing you speak to concern how your office is going to be responsive to concerns of crime victims. However, as an organization that is primarily a civil, constitutional, and human rights organizations, we're very concerned about what we've observed and committed a substantial amount of time of our advocacy to, which we have characterized that as predatory policing. And what we're concerned about is making sure that the criminal justice system in St. Tammany doesn't become a tool for trying to avoid civil liability that becomes a possibility because of the misconduct or the alleged misconduct of law enforcement officers. So we've been quite concerned about in order to try to minimize exposure because of questionable encounters of law enforcement with the citizens of St. Tammany. There's criminal prosecutions that perhaps are ill-advised. For example, pursuing criminal prosecutions when the foundation of it is simply resisting arrest or disturbing the peace associated with how a private citizen responded to an arrest. In other words, there's no predicate allegation of any type of criminal conduct. It's just simply how you responded to being detained and arrested. And we have characterized that as a abuse of criminal process. And we have the prosecutor using their discretion to proceed with these questionable cases. And we recognize that part of the motivation could be simply trying to make sure that there's no liability exposure because of the conduct of law enforcement. But we don't want a criminal justice system that's covering itself by ill-advised criminal prosecutions and wrongful convictions. And then finally, our concern, or one of our major concerns, is your commitment to making sure that there's better candidates for law enforcement, because that is a central point of the criminal justice system, the gateway to involvement in the criminal justice system is is encounters between civilians and law enforcement officers. So we want to make sure that we have officers who are coming in with a philosophy of protect and serve, and who are culturally sensitive. So again, concern for crime victims, making sure that our criminal justice system doesn't get weaponized against any of the citizens of the community, and then also getting the support of your office in picking better law enforcement candidates, which is where criminal law enforcement begins, the encounters between civilians and criminal law enforcement officers.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Zena. And again, Dr. Zena is the Assistant Chief of Operations for Louisiana United International Warrant. And we have been very busy and, focusing on this very serious concern. But most importantly, we want to make sure, that you get all the money that you need. It's not a question. We also, is for giving you the money. But I want to say, we want you to be able to feel very comfortable. And one thing I love about you is your transparency. That's why I just put your website in the chat so that people can go and visit the website. So we really want you to be able to answer these questions. So if you want to take the time out to respond what Dr. Z just asked you, and then we're going to go right into some of the questions that we have listed for you already. So take your time and go right ahead.
Sure. Well, look, I don't know that she asked me a direct question, and I want to answer the direct questions, but all of us agree that we live in the United States of America, where as citizens of the United States, we have certain rights and privileges. We also have obligations, where we have rights and privileges. And it's the role of government to protect those rights and privileges. And if you go back to, our founding fathers, with all the warts and errors that existed, even at that time, they understood that we don't want too much power in government, because government can use that power to oppress us. And we just came off a week last week, which in many of our communities we referred to as Holy Week, and that week concerned the trial of Jesus the Christ about 2,000 years ago. And in that trial, we saw someone, Jesus, who was very unpopular with certain authorities. And those authorities used the system of justice that they had at the time to unjustly arrest and punish and then crucify an innocent man, a man had only, as far as we know, only did good. And we want to avoid that. And I think our system is set up so that we can, as much as possible, as much as humanly possible, avoid those situations where individuals who are not doing anything wrong are in fact arrested and incarcerated, and in some cases persecuted. And I recognize that as a district attorney, that we need to be very much aware of that. And the power that I wield on behalf of the people is there to protect the people, to serve the people, and not to be a bully, not to be arrogant, and not to wrongly use that power, but to use that power humbly and use it with great discretion. And discretion, by discretion, I mean to use it sparingly, so to speak, and not in an arrogant fashion, and not in a way to harm people, but use it in a way to protect people, to help people, and to build a better community. So I think that we agree on all those things. And let me just say that no one wants predator police authorities. In fact, what the police are supposed to do is to protect us from the predators. That's what we want the police to do, is protect us from the predators.
Absolutely.
And of course, I think Belinda, I think all of us agree that most police, that's exactly what they're about, is protecting us from predators. And so we have to help the police, and we have to be on guard, though, whether it's the police, whether it's district attorneys, anybody who's in a position of power can let that power go to their head and abuse that power against those who are vulnerable. And of course, the more vulnerable you are in our community, the more likely you are to be subject to abuse. And I'm aware of that, and I try to focus on that. And one of the values, you might say, that I have at the district attorney's office is for us to lean into the wind, so to speak, with those who are marginalized, those who are vulnerable, those who are in a position of weakness, to make sure that government serves them, and that we as people, as individuals and as citizens, we're not the slave of government. The government is the servant of the people. So I think we all agree on those things, and I try to do those things in my operation, in my service as district attorney. And I look forward to answering the questions, the details, as they say. The devil is in the details. So I'm happy to go into the details about what we do at the DA's office to serve the public and protect the innocent, and to keep the predators, whether they're civilians or whether they are in positions of authority, keep the predators from taking advantage of each and every one of us.
Absolutely, Juan. Thank you so much. So let's go right into some of the questions and concerns that we have as a community organization. So just take your time, try to, get to the point, so we don't, use too much of the time, and be able to satisfy the question as in sync as we possibly can, or clear as we possibly can.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
question number 1. You ready?
Yes, ma'am, I'm ready.
Please explain, on your website, you say you have reduced the jail population.
Yes. Okay. There's been a substantial reduction in the jail population. And first, I want to make sure we all understand that there's a difference between a jail and a prison. The jail is the local facility where people are housed temporarily as they are awaiting trial, or if they're convicted, they're held there temporarily before they're transferred to a prison. So a jail is operated by the local community. In the case of Louisiana, that's the parish. The sheriff operates the jail, but it's a parish jail. The prison is intended to hold people for longer periods of time after they've been sentenced, after they've been found guilty. And that facility, the prison, is operated by the state of Louisiana. So prisons all across the United States are operated by the states, or in some cases by the federal government, holding people, incarcerating people after they have been found guilty of a crime and they are serving their sentences. So what have we done to reduce the jail population? Well, first thing we've done in the last 2 years is, when COVID hit, just a little over 2 years ago, we sat down with the public defender and with the judges and with the private attorneys, and we reviewed all of the cases, because we don't want someone who's arrested, let's just say for DWI, and is awaiting trial, or arrested on a simple burglary, that's their first offense and they're awaiting trial, or for a non-violent offense for which they maybe will receive probation or a minimal sentence. We did not want them in jail where they might be exposed to COVID. And at that time, we thought COVID might be a death sentence. So you don't want people who might get a minimal sentence exposed to a death sentence because they're locked in jail and they might be transmitting that disease to other people. So we reduced, all of us working together, the DA, the criminal defense community, and the judges and the sheriff, to reduce the jail population substantially. I can't remember what the numbers were and are, but I think the jail population could very well have been cut in half within 6 months after this whole COVID situation developed. The other way that we reduce the jail population is to reduce the time from arrest to the time of resolution of the case. And to the extent that we can reduce that time period from arrest to resolution to give people speedy trials, to the extent we can reduce that, there are fewer people sitting in jail awaiting their trial. And not only does that reduce the jail population, it also reduces costs to parish government, because parish is no longer having to house someone in jail awaiting trial. So let's make sure if someone's arrested, we don't want to rush them to trial, but we want to give them a speedy trial. We don't want them waiting for months or years before they get a trial and are then sentenced to prison. And lastly, what if the police made the wrong arrest and the DA, in reviewing the case and preparing it for trial, in fact, charged somebody improperly? I say charge them improperly. It might have been technically correct. What if the person wasn't guilty? What if they were at the wrong place at the wrong time? What if the police made a mistake? What if the DA made a mistake? We want to get that person out of the criminal justice system as quickly as possible, because that person will not be proven guilty and they shouldn't be sitting in jail at all. So we've made a big effort to do that. We reduced it initially pre-COVID about 16%, saving about $1 million a year to St. Tammany Parish government. And then post-COVID, we reduced the number of people in prison. I say post-COVID, post the discovery of COVID and the onslaught of the whole COVID pandemic, we reduced it further so that people wouldn't be exposed to the disease while they're in jail. And so I don't have all the numbers with me. I do know that we reduced the time from arrest to conviction 16%, and that in fact reduced the number of people in jail.
Thank you so much, Warren. That was, a lengthy question, but I think you covered everything.
Okay, I'm trying to be thorough, but I don't want to use too much time.
Right, but that's some really good information. And thanks for mentioning the parish. There's also on your website where you save over $5 million or something like that. You save money. What happens? Do they take that money away from you? What happens when you save the parish that kind of money? What happens?
Well, we were able to save it in two ways.
Mm-hmm.
One, we would submit our budget every year to St. Tammany Parish government, and they would approve our budget, and whatever it might be. Let's assume that our budget was, $5 million, just to give a number. So every year we would come in under budget, anywhere from $50,000 to $250,000, and we've done that every year. We've come in under budget, and so when you add that up, I've been in office now. I'm going into my 8th year. When you add that up over 7 years, it's quite a sum of money. The other thing we did is that parish government had illegally operated a legal department. And when I was first elected, I discovered that, and I had to sue St. Tammany Parish to get them to transfer that authority back over to me. And after a couple of years of litigation, we went to the state Supreme Court and we won 7-0. Saying that that legal department belonged to the district attorney. And the budget on that legal department was about $2.25 million. And when I took it over, I cut it by $500,000. I reduced the expenses by about $500,000. And of course, that saved about $500,000 a year for the last couple of years. So all of those mechanisms, by taking back the civil department and reducing unnecessary expenses, by coming in under budget on a regular basis, And of course, by reducing the time from arrest to conviction, I've saved the parish of St. Tammany and you, the taxpayer, many millions of dollars. And I'm not necessarily proud of that, but I'm happy that I was able to do it. And of course, it's what I should do as your district attorney. Everybody works very hard and they pay their taxes, and I don't want to waste anybody's money, nor my own.
Very good, Warren. We got some questions coming in through the chat, but I want to focus on what percentage of convictions are plea bargains?
Boy, I couldn't give you the exact number, but I would say roughly I would say they're roughly 95% of convictions are plea bargains. And that's true not only in Louisiana, in the state system, that's true pretty much across the country. And it's also true in the felony system, in the federal system, in federal court. The vast majority of cases are resolved by plea bargaining. And let me just say, as you know, Belinda, I practiced criminal defense law. I was the criminal defense lawyer prior to becoming DA. And that statistic held for me as a criminal defense lawyer, that I plea bargained the vast majority of my cases.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Warren, and I feel the public really need to know that. But one of my concerns is that plea bargaining is how poor people are being kind of like railroaded into jail. Because a lot of people wind up in prison because they can't afford an attorney. So will some of your one of the questions in the chat is that the public defender's office is so underfunded. Is there any way in this passing of the for the DA for these taxes for you to get more money? Is there any plan to use some of that money to help fund that public defender's office? Is it any plan for that?
It's a very good question. There's no plan to use DA tax money to fund the public defender's office. And one reason, Belinda, is it's unconstitutional. Because if I gave money to the public defender's office, there would be people thinking that I'm bribing the public defender's office to have people plead guilty, if you follow what I'm saying. There'd be people who said, you got to be kidding me. The DA's playing both sides of the fence, and he's having undue influence over the public defender. So the Supreme Court doesn't want me to fund the public defender's office. Now, what I can do, and what I have done, is when I was elected, I put in what's called a screening department, an enhanced screening department, so that when we got the reports from the police, we didn't just accept those reports. We examined them, we reviewed them to make sure that what they were arrested for were the proper charges. Because sometimes the police, and look, they've got a tough job. We all know that, we all agree that most police and most sheriff's deputies are doing the best they can, but they've got tough jobs. And sometimes they arrest people for the wrong charges. In other words, somebody might be guilty, but they put the wrong charges on them, or they arrest the wrong person. Sometimes maybe a crime was committed, and some of these people who commit crimes, they're very good at saying, oh no, I didn't do it, Belinda did it. And they point the finger at Belinda, and the next thing you know, Belinda gets caught up in the criminal justice system. So part of the role of the DA's office is to weed out those bad cases and to make sure that innocent people aren't caught up in the criminal justice system. And that's what that enhanced screening department does. When I was first elected, there was one lawyer full-time and one lawyer part-time and one investigator. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 lawyers, 5 lawyers full-time and 2 investigators full-time to make sure that we've got the right case and the right people that we're prosecuting. And the other thing it does is it speeds up this entire process from arrest to resolution. Because now when someone's charged with a crime, they don't just sit in jail waiting to be brought to trial. their attorneys, the public defender, can get their discovery information, what the charges are, what the evidence against them is. They get that electronically, and they get it promptly, not in 90 days or 120 days. They get it in 30 to 60 days. They get that. And so if we've got the wrong person, we need to know about that, because we need to get them out of jail.
Mhm.
And you know, the other thing is, if they really are, and if they're not guilty, if they're not involved in a violent crime or a crime where they're going to go out and commit another crime after they get out, let's put them out on bond. Let's get them out there and help them get a job, and let them be tax-paying productive citizens. Because just as you said, I mean, I'm just going to say it because it's the truth. Under the previous regime, the previous district attorney, there were a substantial number of people who would be arrested on charges where they were overcharged by the police. The DA would accept those overcharged police charges, and they would charge them they would overcharge them. And then as a defense attorney, I couldn't get the discovery to litigate the case, and someone would sit in jail 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, maybe a year before I could finally get to trial. And that was wrong. That was
Right.
wrong. And that's why you want to go from arrest to resolution.
Right, absolutely. But I'm definitely
Miss
looking
Belinda,
forward to yeah,
I-
go ahead.
I wanted to piggyback on that, and Attorney Montgomery really, tapped in some of my
Yeah.
concerns, because I was trying to find out. You mentioned in trying to reduce the jail population, you consulted, I believe, with about the cases, the lawyers. Have you engaged or contemplated coordinating with law enforcement, with the sheriff's office, perhaps looking at different offenses that may be low priority for his office as well as your office for prosecution? I know more, the thought of a moratorium on any crime is probably something that you're uncomfortable with, but have you considered that coordinating with local law enforcement as a way of not bringing certain cases into the criminal justice system?
Well, let me just say that we, the people, elect legislators, people who represent us, and they go to Baton Rouge or to go to Washington, D.C., and they pass the laws. And I have to be very careful that I don't substitute my judgment for the judgment of our elected representatives. You know, if our elected representative thinks that something should be a crime, I'm not, I don't want to be a dictator. I shouldn't be a dictator. If it's a crime and our elected representatives thinks that it needs to be sanctioned, then I should prosecute it. Now, I have some discretion, and I do use my discretion on certain low-level crimes. For instance, simple possession of marijuana. If that's a first offense, I typically put that person into a program we call diversion, where we don't charge them and they don't go to jail. And some people call it DA probation, where they don't go to jail, they're not charged, and after a year, the charge goes away if they don't engage in further criminal conduct. The same thing with some other minor offenses, minor shoplifting. I don't think shoplifting is good. I don't want somebody coming in my store, if I had a store, and having somebody steal. But people make mistakes for a variety of reasons, and as long as they're not repeating their mistake, if it's a one-off mistake, let's don't pull them into the criminal justice system. And specifically, we need to be aware of those young people in our community who make a mistake, and in many instances, they don't have the family support. And the last thing I want to do, and the last thing we want to do, is to bring that person and put them in jail where they're going to be around some real criminals and have them associate with real criminals. And then they will come out of that experience more likely to commit crimes. So we don't want to put people in jail unless we absolutely have to, particularly younger people. We want to keep them out of the jail. And look, older people, sometimes they do things, they make mistakes. And look, sometimes the police make mistakes.
Mhm.
Sometimes the police arrest the wrong person. And, you know, police are just like the rest of us. I don't like to admit I made a mistake. None of us like to admit we made a mistake, but we do make mistakes. And part of my role is to verify, hey, officer, you know, maybe you had some bad information. Let's look at that. And if we made a mistake, let's admit that mistake and move beyond it as quickly as possible.
You know, I'm glad you brought that point up, DA Warren. It's because that was one of my concerns. You know what are we going to do about prosecuting those police officers who normally know for a fact, now listen to me carefully, that they have lied under oath and falsified their police report? You know, are we going to prosecute those crimes? You know, when they know, you know, because, you know, we talked about corruption, and you know, you ran on the platform of stamping out corruption, you know, making things better for our community, you know, so that's a big concern right now, especially when it, you know, not so much only, you know, the big concern with politicians being corrupt, but, you know, like Ronald Green's incident, you know, I know, you know, this is national news right now. These police, you know, they lied. They gave a false report. They actually said that the man ran into a tree. That's what caused his death. So how are we gonna prosecute those crimes? Go right ahead, Warren.
Yeah, well, I've got a list. As you know, Belinda, when I first ran, of course, I wasn't very popular with the law
Right.
enforcement authorities. I always considered myself a friend of the law enforcement community, and I think I still am. I believe I am a friend of the law enforcement community. But if you break the law, I don't care whether you're a member of the law enforcement community or just a regular civilian, you need to, you know, you need to receive the consequences of that. As a matter of fact, I think that if you are in law enforcement, if you're a district attorney, if you're a judge, I think you should hold yourself to a higher standard. And I can tell you that most law enforcement people believe that as well. So let me just read you a couple of cases, and I can go on all. I mean, I don't want to take too much time, but
right.
you know,
Go ahead.
since I've been in office, William Jones, who was a Causeway police detective evidence officer, we charged him with malfeasance in office and theft of a firearm. He was found guilty as charged. He went to trial, found guilty as charged. He got a 4-year prison sentence. Timothy Phelps, he was with probation and parole. He was charged with malfeasance in office. Actually, he was arrested and he died while his case was still under review. Johnny Sanders was a Mandeville Police Department officer. He was charged with theft. He was off duty at the time of the offense. He was found guilty of charge. The guilt is charged, and this is in 2018. He got 1 year probation. Ricky Steiner. Now, this is the case that you probably remembered. He was a guy who arrested a guy for DWI and falsified a police report. We prosecuted him. He was found guilty of malfeasance in office, and he received a prison sentence. Another guy, Nathan Stokes. This was, by the way, Ricky Steiner was in 2020. Nathan Stokes in 2019, malfeasance in office, misdemeanor theft, pled guilty as charged to misdemeanor theft. Got a year probation. I think he was the guy who stole I think he stole or sold a taser or something like that. And of course, Kenneth Salanjeski, a guy who was shaking down people for drugs, and he went to trial. He was found guilty of 2 counts of malfeasance in office for distribution of marijuana. He pled guilty as charged and got a 4-year sentence with 1 year in jail and 3 years suspended. And I can go on and on and on. But of course, and all of us remember the case of Jack Strain, who was the former sheriff. And he was charged with multiple counts of aggravated rape and aggravated incest. He went to trial and he was found guilty last year and he's spending the rest of his life in prison. So I mean, I if you have the time,
right?
I got the time. And I
We're
got
very
more things
familiar
to
with
talk
your
about.
list. We're very familiar with your list, Warren, because, you know, like you say, that's part of the community stepping up to root out this type of corruption in our community. So, I really appreciate you, addressing that. But, there should be, like you said, there should be a set standard for them not to, not to even bring these lies into our courts.
Absolutely. And we prosecute those people. We're an equal opportunity prosecutor. Now, let me just say something, Belinda, though, about charging them with perjury. Okay. Because I've personally prosecuted perjury cases. They're tough to prove. So you mentioned, if you remember what I just read off, almost all of those cases were malfeasance.
Okay.
So it's difficult to prove a perjury case. Not impossible, but it's difficult. So it's much easier for us to prove something besides perjury. Now, if I think someone, I will tell you this: if I think a police officer is lying, that's it. His career in terms of bringing cases into the DA's office is over.
Yeah.
And we disclose that to the defense attorney. And I don't want lying assistant district attorneys. I don't want lying judges. I don't want lying police officers. I don't like liars. I don't care who they, I don't care what they do for a living.
Right.
And none of us do. And if I can prosecute them for lying, I will. But it's tough to prosecute somebody for perjury. It's not easy.
Well, very good, Warren. That's it for me. I would like for Dr. Zena to come back and to voice any concerns or anything that we may have left out, Dr. Zena. If not, then I see a couple questions inside of the chat that we can, that's coming in from the people. And then if you want to, we can open up the mics if anyone can use the reactions to raise their hand. And then we're gonna have Warren, we're doing good on time. We can have him give his last final comments, and share a little bit with us about the reason why the DA's office want us to support, this sales tax. Go right ahead.
No, I don't have anything extra to add, Ms. Belinda. You are very thorough, and I thoroughly enjoyed the exchange between you and DA Montgomery. Now, because we are at a town hall meeting, what I can do now is, take us out of the spotlight and bring everyone into the meeting. And as you say, at the bottom of your screen, you should see an option of clicking on reactions. And if anyone in the audience clicks on reactions, you'll see where you can raise your hand, and we'll try to, in an orderly way, call on people to speak with Attorney Montgomery or you, Ms. Parker Brown. So is it okay for me to go ahead and open up the meeting for everyone?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, let me take a few moves to do that. Okay, and I think that, let me see. Okay, now we have everybody, people who don't have their cameras on. I'm not sure if they're going to be
can you see the reactions?
Yes, I can see their reactions, and I'm going to go ahead and call on Alka Pittman. If you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
Greetings.
Greetings.
I basically have a question directly involving 22nd Judicial. Who do we complain to when the judges are displaying misconduct or maladministration or nepotism or favoritism in the courtroom, even going so far as to relocate toddler children away from their mother without just cause?
So your question is who do we complain when there is a situation with a judge
Yes.
that is perhaps malfeasance in office, like Warren just talked about with the police officers. Okay. Warren, could you answer that question?
Yes, if you believe that what they are doing is a crime, then you would report that to the local police. If they do not take appropriate action, then you go to the federal authorities and report it to them. If it's not a crime, then what you would do is report it to the Louisiana Supreme Court, because the Louisiana Supreme Court has the authority to manage all of those judges and even to remove those judges, and to sanction them. I don't mean with jail, but to remove them and otherwise sanction them for misconduct. So if it's a criminal matter that they're doing, that they're engaged in, you can go to the local authorities or go to the federal authorities if you feel like the local authorities are compromised or won't do anything. If it's not a criminal matter, then you would go to the Louisiana Supreme Court, and they have a judicial commission who handles those sorts of things and does in fact sanction those judges. And from time to time, they've been known to remove judges for misconduct.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you, Warren. Okay, Dr. Z.
Okay, we have Mr. Dennis Knowles.
Hey, thank you. Good evening. My question to you, Mr. Warren, is when officers have been found to have been corrupted, are the cases that they had previously had prosecuted, and depending on the case, revisited as well? How is that handled in your office?
Thank you, Mr. Knowles. And I think I've met you before. I think you've been on one of these before, I believe, if I recognize your face.
Yes, I remember you.
So if a prosecutor, well, let's take the case. Let's take the case of Jack Strain. He was the sheriff, and he was found guilty of crimes. Now, the fact that Jack Strain was engaged in criminal activity itself does not mean that every case that's been brought before the DA's office, for the last 20 years, that person also wasn't involved in crime. But it does give me an opportunity or an excuse to review those cases. So, I can in fact review those cases if I have the resources to do so. And that's why this tax is important, because I have reviewed cases where I found that someone was guilty of a crime. An example of that, you mentioned earlier, this little list, this guy, Ricky Steiner. Ricky Steiner was a St. Tammany Parish deputy who came into court, and he got the defendant to plead guilty. So I take that back, excuse me. I think they went to trial, and Ricky Steiner got on the witness stand, and the person was found guilty. And then later on, my office found out that Steiner had manipulated the police report. And we, on our own, went back into court and had that judgment, that guilty judgment, vacated. So if you have a case where you feel that someone was wrongfully convicted or convicted on false information, you can bring that to my office and we'll investigate it. And we'll overturn the conviction. I can't remember how many we've had like that. It hasn't been a lot, but obviously we did it with Ricky Steiner, and we'll do it with other ones. I'm not in the business. There's plenty enough crime out there with guilty people who committed offenses that I don't have to convict somebody or even go after somebody who's innocent and based on false testimony. And again, if I know that police officer has a reputation for lying or has lied in the past, I don't let him take the stand. I simply don't bring the case based on the testimony of a lying police officer. And that's in my discretion, and I've done that on a number of cases.
Very good. All right.
Mr.
Go ahead, Dr. Z.
Mr. Kevin Quattrobinch.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And you can talk
Okay.
directly with the district attorney.
Ms. Montgomery, I have two questions. One, St. Tammany is known for its lengthy pretrial processes. And I just wonder if, it's generally said that is to wear down defendants. And financially and emotionally to have them plea out. And St. Tammany is kind of notorious for plea deals. So I'm wondering if that is a mechanism the district attorney's office uses, how that impacts the finances of the district attorney's office, having such lengthy pretrial processes. Also, I'd like to know if the tax increase that you're requesting, does that include any raises for assistant district attorneys or staff, or is that purely for administrative duties for criminal justice? Thank you for
Okay.
taking my questions.
Juan,
Yes,
hold
sir.
up before you answer that real quick, because we want to give you the last 10 minutes to, could you take those questions that he just asked into your closing comments and just bring us all to why this tax is so important to the DA's office?
Okay,
Right
very
ahead.
good. That's also another, all these questions are really good. And by the way, Kevin, let me just comment on that. I agree with you that in the past, the process has taken so long. And that's why when I got in the office, I put in that enhanced screening division to shorten that time frame. And we in fact did shorten that time frame. And I wanted to shorten it even more. And then COVID hit. And instead of shortening it, it's grown longer. So I've got to get back on it, and we are on it. But I need resources to be able to accomplish that. But you're right, we shouldn't want lengthy pre-trials. I mean, these cases should be done, certainly felony cases should be done within a year, and misdemeanor cases should be done within 6 months. There's no reason for it to go on and on. Now, I'll mention one factor, though, Kevin. It's not always the prosecution. Sometimes the defense attorney prefers to have the case continued is the legal jargon for postponed, because the defense attorney wants to squeeze more money out of his client. And that's a sad thing. It's called bleed 'em and plead 'em. And I'm not accusing any specific defense attorney of doing that, but that is just as common as it is for prosecutors to try to extend the case in order to try to get somebody to plead guilty. There are defense attorneys who try to extend the case in order to, in essence, extort money from their clients. So it works on both sides. But I'm dedicated to shorten that time frame up. I had shortened it up. It's expanded now with COVID, and we're going to try to get it back down. And we're going full bore to try to get those cases resolved. Now, if it's a murder case, Kevin, then, look, we want to be sure we don't convict an innocent person of murder. So those cases will often take 2 or 3 years to come to fruition, because obviously this person, if he's found guilty of murder, is going to spend the rest of his life in jail. So murders, aggravated rape cases, all of those major cases are going to take a more lengthy time, because we don't want to be wrong. We want to be right in our conviction. With regards to the monies that I hope to raise, yes, these monies are going to go to principally, well, of course, principally to salaries, not only of the prosecutors, but to all of my staff. I know each and every one of you out there, and you're going to the gas station and filling up your car with gas, and you're saying, what is going on? Because our cost of living has gone up. In all of the people at the DA's office, their cost of living has gone up, but I didn't give them a raise in 2021. I gave very few raises in 2021, and I gave no raises in 2022. So I'm beginning to lose high quality, top of the line prosecutors, the kind of people you want to prosecute. If you're innocent, you want that kind of prosecutor prosecuting you, because that prosecutor is going to say, this case is nonsense. And then that prosecutor, the high quality prosecutors, aren't going to let these cases hang around. They want to move that docket. And the same with the judges. They want to move that docket. That's a big focus. And so, yes, I'm going to use this money to make sure that that we move those cases as quickly as possible, give people a fair trial, number one, and an efficient trial, number two, and of course, an effective criminal justice system, number three. And that's why this tax is so important, not because I like taxes. None of us like taxes, but we have to balance, do we want a fair, effective, just, efficient criminal justice system that's going to make sure that bad predators are taken out of our community and that innocent people are not unjustly caught up in the criminal justice system? Or are we willing to pay a small tax to make that happen? If we're not willing to pay that small tax, then we can end up with an inefficient, ineffective criminal justice system that permits predators, whether they're members of law enforcement or not members of law enforcement, to prey on the vulnerable people of our community. And I don't want that to happen. And this tax, which is right now, you can early vote on this tax. And the election itself is April 30th. This tax amounts to about $24 for each one of us. So it's roughly the cost of a cup of coffee. And I don't mean a Starbucks cup of coffee, not one of those lattes. I mean a regular cup of coffee. That's what it amounts to each month for each of us. And I would suggest to you that I think it's worth us paying for a small cup of coffee at McDonald's and paying those 2 months to make sure we've got a fair, effective, and efficient criminal justice system. Because we don't want innocent people caught up in there. And we want just what you said. We don't want these pre-trials being pushed back and back and back. But if I don't have the resources to do my job, that is what's going to happen. And that's wrong.
Wow, Warren, we're getting some really good comments that are coming through, saying that this very informative information, that is wonderful information. So our time have almost come to a close, and this have been great. I feel like we need to do this a little bit more often because, you know, with the information that you have shared with us here on tonight, is very necessary for all of us to know. So, you know, I do have another concern, and you don't have to answer this question now because I do have, you know, I know how to come to the DA's office and get a meeting with you, okay? But, you know, this have been really impressed upon my heart for quite some time now. And I know for a fact that, you know, we had a meeting with you early on, but, you know, you did tell us, you know, that there was a need for funding in the office in order for you to address, you know, our concern. And that concern is that, you know, Walter Reed, you know, the former district attorney, you know, his whole administration, you know, was, you know, just basically corrupt. You know, he was indicted, put in prison, you know, due to a lot of our effort in the community, along with some other grassroots organizations. And you know who some of those people are. Jack Strain, you know, convicted, you know, put in prison, maybe spending the rest of his life in prison. We don't know. I know he's up for appeal, but you, like you say, you tried that case. You know, so my concern is that all of this have taken place, and there have really been no public discussion in regards to a lot of the people that are sitting in prison right now up under these two corrupt politicians that had these powerful positions, you know. So one of my concerns is that if there's any way possible, we can have resources of money to go back and review these cases. You know, some of these people, you know, even after the highest court, the Supreme Court, ruled about the non-unanimous jury verdict, a lot of these people went to prison on that non-unanimous jury verdict. So, you know, but I'm just concerned about here, you know, how we can review these cases that I probably have vetted over 1,700 just along within our organization of cases of people that probably should not be sitting in prison right now up on the Walter Reed's corrupt administration. So take a few minutes. We got 5 minutes left, and then give us your closing comments. And we want to, you know, if I don't have nothing else to say, I just want to thank you so very much for coming and being a part of this necessary town hall meeting with us tonight. And hearing from you was just a breath of fresh air, because you really gave us some very good information tonight. Thank you, Warren.
Thank you, Belinda. Thank you for organizing this. Let me just talk about a few of those cases. And you and I sat down in my office, and we talked about this when I was first elected. And I said, look, my job right now, when I'm first elected, is I want to make sure we're not prosecuting any more innocent people. I know there may be some people in the past who were wrongfully prosecuted, but I just want to make sure I don't put any more, wrongfully prosecuted people in jail. And so that's what I've spent a lot of time, is making sure we didn't have any more of that. Now, I have, in fact, gone back on a couple of cases. This guy named Jamal Cox, who was prosecuted under the previous administration.
Yeah.
And he's over in Slidell. He's out of jail. And under my administration, we worked with the defense attorney, and he got out, and I think he's driving trucks. You may know Jamal.
Yeah, he was one of our members. Yeah.
Okay. There's another guy. His last name is Frazier. He's from Bogalusa. And we assisted with his attorney. And I think actually just before Christmas, I think he got out. He had gotten a pretty heavy-handed sentence.
Yeah.
And we reduced that. And we had a few other cases like that, but there haven't been many of them. And I got to tell you, I have a stack of cases on my desk that have been sitting there for 5 years, maybe 10, maybe 6 years.
Absolutely.
And
I was going to ask you about that. Right. Go ahead.
There's probably about 10 cases, and they're staring me, but I don't have the resources right now to do that. Now, if I get this funding, that's going to give me a lot more resources to be able to look at those old cases. And I can't promise you that I'm going to get to all of them, but I'll sure have a much greater opportunity if I have the resources to investigate that. And I want everyone who's listening to this to know, Warren Montgomery, I don't want innocent people in jail. I don't want, in fact, if I don't have to put anybody in jail for the rest of my life, that'll be great with me. Jail's not a good place. Now, if I've got to put somebody in jail or in prison to protect each one of us, look at here tonight, well, you know what? Some people, we don't want those predator people, whether they're civilians or whether they're police. We don't want them out on the streets preying on all of us. We want to be able to do just what we're doing right now. And that is, I'm at home, and I'm safe in my home, and you're safe in your homes. And that's what we need. So it's a very real issue, what you're referring to. I don't know how many of those people are out there, but I have looked at them. And those cases I'm referring to, by the way, it's not those people weren't completely innocent. Jamal Cox wasn't completely innocent. He had done some bad things. I just thought the sentence he received was inappropriate for his conduct. And as well as these other people, there's a guy named William Lee, who we just agreed to reduce his sentence. He was in jail for life. And we agreed to reduce his sentence for a variety of reasons. So I've done that, but I haven't done it a lot. I want to be careful. I don't want predators. If they're in jail, I don't want them coming out and preying on us.
Well, we want to make sure that you get all the money that you need, especially when you're saying that you got cases that's sitting there that needs to be heard, that's been sitting there for 4 to 5 years. We really want some type of expedition or something, to speed that process up, because people's lives are on hold for that, So again, I really appreciate you, Warren, and I want to keep saying that the early voting have already, no, it starts this week. Early voting starts this week.
That's correct. You can early vote right now through this Saturday, and I encourage you to do that. And please vote for this tax. There's something else that if this tax doesn't pass, my funding is going to be cut in half. And the warrant clinics that I've been able to do, where we've been able to have warrants recalled against people, the expungement clinics, that I've put on over the years, those things are going to go by the wayside because I'm just going to be struggling to survive. And I'm not going to be able to do many of the good things that I have been able to do, much less go back and look at some of these previous cases that probably are worth a good review. So
Ms.
thank you all
Belinda,
so much for having me.
we have Ms. Pittman. She
Yeah.
wants to know if Mr. Montgomery has an open door policy.
I do have an open door policy. However,
Yes.
let me just say that I want you to have an attorney with you. If I met with every single citizen, I would never be able to get my job done. So I require, if somebody wants to meet with me, I want you to have an attorney with you so that person can talk about the law. Now, look, I meet with Belinda knows, I've met with Belinda on a number of occasions and I've talked to
Absolutely.
people all the time, but I can't meet with everybody. I just can't. I can't meet with everybody.
Right.
So I
We
require
certainly understand
that
that,
you have a
Warren,
lawyer
and we
present
don't
when
want
you
you to,
meet with me
right,
to talk about a case.
right,
we
but
can
we
actually
certainly
accomplish
understand that, buddy, but you've been great with your open door policy. And I really appreciate you, just like you being here with us tonight. I know this is a busy time for everyone, right after a holiday weekend. And you graced us with your presence here tonight. We really appreciate you so much. But on this note, we're out of time. And what we want everyone to do is that if you did have a question, that's something that's hot and burning, you can also email us at info, that's info@launitedI.org. Email us your questions and we would do our best to make sure that we respond to you with your question or your concern, and be in touch with the DA on a regular basis so that we can make sure that everyone is supporting the fact that he's saying to us that the money is needed. He can do so much more to make things better for all of us here in our parish. So thank you so very much, Warren. Once again, have a great night, everybody. Dr. Z, is there anything else? Warren, do you have any final words? We got 1 minute.
We're all done.
Okay, on that note, good night, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.